Before we get started tonight, Assistant City Manager Steve Harsman, Acting City Manager, has a few service awards he'd like to give out.
First of all, we have a long-term employee who has been with us, gone away, been with us, gone away, been with us, gone away. Hazel, please come forward. Hazel Keplinger. Hazel worked with us for a long, I'm not even going to say how long you've been with us, Hazel. Let's just go with 10 years. How's that? 10 years, 24 years. I know that she was here when I started my career, and then she left and she came back, and I've been here for 30 years. So thank you very much for your work, Hazel.
Well, thank you.
You do great work. Thank you. Next is another long-term one of our chiefs, S.R. Hunter. Thank you, S.R. Appreciate it. And I think we have some others, but I don't think they're here. I don't think anybody else is here, so we're going to go ahead and go through them. Ignacio Diaz, one of our Public Works guys, he actually reads the meters here. Jose Lopez, Public Works. Marla Nix is, if you call Public Works, Marla is who answers the phone. She pretty much organizes everything up there. David Buchanan runs our Public Works Department right now. And Jose Rodriguez Cardenas. What is that? Cardenas. We appreciate all of their work. Thank you.
The Tuesday, July 5th meeting of the Bethany City Council. Please stand for the invocation by Councilmember Holloway, and stay standing for the flag salute, please.
Please bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you, Lord, and we just ask you to be gracious to us, Lord. We search for you, Lord, and ask for your wisdom in all things that we do for the city, for the citizens, for the institutions of this great city, Lord. We just pray your blessings upon each one. Lord, be with the ones that are not present tonight. Bless their families. Watch over each one. Lord, we thank you for the blessings that you've given us. Watch over the ones that protect us, the ones that are in harm's way, away from home, and the ones here at home that watch over us day and night. Lord, we pray these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Please face the flag. Attention. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. The first item on tonight's agenda is the consent docket. We have items A through F. Do any of those items need to be pulled or addressed separately? If not, I'll take a motion as a whole on the consent docket.
Motion to approve, please.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Please post your votes. Thank you. Item 2 is called to the public. If any member of the audience wishes to address the council, please step forward to the podium. First, state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. We do have several public hearing items. You could speak during those as well.
Gilbert Carlson, 2601 North Rockwell. I'd like to remind the staff, council members, and the public that we have the old Cholino's restaurant on 23rd Street is back up and running after a long and well-deserved cleanup, revamping. Its business now is Cantina Bravo. They have lunches from $4.99 and evening meals from $6.99, and the food is quite good. I do recommend that you go by and support our local business because, as Mr. Moore and I know, 23rd Street is the heart of our financial returns on sales tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address the council?
My name is Richard Day. I live on 25th Street, just off of Glade. I was here at the last meeting to talk to my representatives about the number of break-ins and attempted break-ins to cars that we've been having. I've taken it up with the police department. I'm now here at the city council meeting trying to take it up because I cannot get the chief to call me back. I can't get people at the police department to forward my information on to the chief to hear back from him. I cannot do anything. I've done everything that I can think of to do myself to try and bring this issue up. But the fact is, I moved to Bethany 13 months ago because I thought, real nice city, didn't really want to be in Oklahoma City. I came up here from Norman after finishing school. And in that 13 months, I've had 5 break-ins or attempted break-ins on my vehicles. The first one, our vehicles were vandalized. We had 3 attempted break-ins. And 2 weeks ago now, my vehicle was broken into, and I'm out $2,500 worth of tools. Every officer I've dealt with has been excellent. Really happy with our police department, our police officers. Not at all happy with the department. The dispatchers don't take the issue seriously. The response time has been upwards of 2.5 hours to have an officer come out and deal with the problem. And I'd like the council to try and do something to bring this issue forward, because it's pretty hard to live here and have my car broken into on average, or attempted to be broken into on average every 3 weeks in the last 3 months. I can answer any questions if you need to, but I didn't know who else to bring it to, because the police department is not returning my calls and is not going anywhere proactively to try and deal with this, other than putting one more car out to drive down our street at night. We have 3 or 4 officers on duty in the city. It's crazy. It's not a huge city, but it's not small. And 3 or 4 officers are not the appropriate number of people to respond to the issues that we're having in the city.
What did you say your name was?
Richard Day. I had to get a hold of David Davis here to find out whether or not the no soliciting, no trespassing sign I have on my house is going to be valid enough to prevent people from coming to my door. No officer would answer that question for me. Nobody at the police department would call me back to answer that question. Entirely separate issue from my car being broken into. But it's just another example of the fact that I cannot get calls returned unless I'm calling them to say, hey, my car just got broken into. And in that case, it's going to take 2.5 hours for somebody to show up.
I would just like for you to know, I'm sure that each one of us is concerned, and I don't want you to take our non-response is that we're not interested because it's not on the agenda. We really cannot respond, but
Does anybody want to propose a way to get the chief to call me back?
We can't even comment on it if it's not on the agenda, but trust me, it will be. But we can't even comment on anything.
Well, I know the chief's been on vacation, so that may be part of the issue, but we'll get to the bottom of it and we'll address it.
I'll be back at the next meeting, I guess.
Anyone else care to address the council? All right, item 3 is a public hearing item, consideration and possible approval of a request by Thomas B. Neal, applicant and property owner, for the purpose of building a 1,000-square-foot accessory building at 3508 North Council Road. Steve?
This is a accessory building that was discussed in the P&Z, and Mr. Payton is here to discuss it.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor noted, this is a...
Peyton, will you please just come in?
Ah,
Thank you.
Paul. There we go. Okay, this is an application for a special use permit to allow an accessory structure in R1 zoning. The applicant is Mr. Thomas B. Neal. Mr. Neal is the owner-occupant of the building at 3500 North 3508 North Council, and that is also the location of the proposed structure. The application is complete and correct in form. Section 159.044B4 requires the special use permit for any structure greater than 240 square feet in residential zoning. As you'll see, this structure meets all of those requirements, and that's why it is before you tonight. Just to give you a little background, the aerial photo, the yellow square represents a 2-acre lot. It's a nice, big, beautiful lot right on Council Road, just south of Northwest 36th Street. This is Overholser Elementary right here. The existing primary structure is that one. There's an existing auxiliary structure right there, used as a garage. That's also where the proposed structure will go. They'll tear that one down and rebuild right where that red circle is. The current zoning is R1. The proposed use is for accessory use for a residential structure, so there's no issue there. The comprehensive plan, as you know, you just adopted a new one. The strategy map from the new 2030 plan shows the property as commercial mixed use. It's that big arrows pointing right there, and that orange area is commercial mixed use. The same plan on the targeted districts map does show the property in the Council Road mixed use corridor. We can discuss the purposes of that corridor in a little while. The plat book shows it is an unplatted parcel, but there is evidence to show that it was deeded and properly subdivided back in the day when it was, so there's no problem with that. Current utilities, there's a water line, a 16-inch cast iron pipe running on the west side of Council. That's one of our 3 main transmission lines, so it certainly would provide enough water for any residential use. The sanitary sewer, there is a 12-inch line running along the south edge of the property. Again, that greatly exceeds any requirement for any residential use. There's a photo from the county assessor's website. It's an absolutely gorgeous lot with trees. The house is a very nice structure. If you look right there in the corner, you can kind of see the edge of the existing accessory structure. It's a garage. It's a normal frame siding structure that has seen better days, but the proposal is to tear that one down and build a new one. With some fancy engineering software, I was able to take that photo and measure the slope of that roof, and it comes out right at 412. The height of this existing structure is about 14.6 feet. It's a little hard to see with the trees there, but it's pretty accurate what I used on it. So this is a site plan that came with the application. Again, the big dark line is the property boundary. The primary structure is way up here, about 1,495 square feet. This is the existing garage right there, about 600 square feet, and then that's also where the proposed 1,000 square foot garage will be rebuilt. All the setback requirements are met. As a matter of fact, greatly exceeded on this giant lot. We don't know of any. There are no known utility conflicts or anything else along those lines. This is an elevation of the proposed structure. You can see it calls out right there 13 feet 4 inches. It's a pretty standard metal building, except that 412 roof is a little steeper than normal, which is nice. This is my favorite sheet. This is a set of plans that came with it, and you can see it's got a structural detail. Whoops, sorry about that. It has a structural detail here and here that clearly shows a 412 pitch there, and again the 13 feet 4 inches here. It's got foundation details, wall sections, all kinds of stuff, and every sheet has a beautiful engineer's seal and signature on it, just like is required. So a wonderful set of plans. I wish they all looked like that. Okay, this is the hard part. State law requires that certain criteria be evaluated. You have to do it. There are certain things you have to consider when you're evaluating a special use permit or a variance, and so we have to sit here and go through every one of them. So please bear with me as we read it into the record. These are the general criteria for evaluating the special use permit. They're spelled out in Section 159 again. First of all, the comprehensive plan. We've already talked about the comprehensive plan. Currently shows this as the Council Road mixed-use corridor. Talks about commercial mixed use. The key objectives of the district include to foster office and professional services-based commercial along the council, to allow for residential conversion, encourage mixed use along the corridor, improve walkability along Council Road with sidewalk. This use, it's a big giant lot residential. It's consistent with that residential use. Not so clear about whether it would encourage the redevelopment that the comprehensive plan. The P&Z talked about this a lot, and since we don't have any ordinances in effect or anything at this point to carry out the comprehensive plan, and this application was actually started before the current plan was approved, so it's a quite gray in there on that. We can talk a little bit more later. The current zoning is R1. Proposed structure is accessory to residential, so that consideration has no problems. Whether the proposed use shall adversely affect the use of neighboring property. The existing building's a little bit smaller than the proposed. Otherwise, has the exact same use, and there's no reason this should affect any of the neighboring property as far as use. Whether the proposed use shall generate pedestrian and vehicular traffic that is hazardous or in conflict. It's a single-family residential. It's not going to generate significant vehicular or pedestrian traffic, so that, again, is not an issue. Whether this facility represents a health or safety hazard to neighboring properties or the community at large. Again, there's nothing inherently unsafe about a building that's accessory to a residential use, and it had those beautiful engineer seals on there, so it's really a safe structure. So that's not an issue either. Whether this facility is located in proximity to elementary or secondary public schools or private schools or other incompatible uses. There is an elementary school abutting to the east, but there is nothing incompatible about this use with a public school. As a matter of fact, public schools are allowed in residential districts, so there's no reason for concern there either. Whether or not the utility, drainage, parking, loading, signs, lighting access, and other necessary public facilities to serve the proposed use shall meet the adopted codes of the city. All of the public facilities necessary to serve a residential use are present or on adjacent properties. Whether the facility has obtained all necessary permits to operate under the laws of the state. There is no operating permit required for residential use. No home occupation would be allowed in the accessory structure. Of course, a building permit will be required prior to construction, and all the inspections would be completed before any certificate of occupancy was issued. So that would be the permit issue. So we've waded through all the general requirements, and now the section C3 goes on to specify specific criteria for accessory structures. These are the relatively new ordinance that you passed not that long ago. Number one, the City Council may impose specific conditions regarding location, design, operation, screening, and security to assure safety, to prevent nuisance, control the noxious effects of excessive sound, light, odor, dust, or similar conditions. Basically what that says, and the council may also impose specific design requirements for accessory buildings to assure that such buildings are aesthetically compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. That says this council can impose whatever design requirements you want. Again, this is a pretty standard metal building, so we will go on from there. The height of the accessory building, measured at its highest point, shall not exceed the height of the primary building. The proposed building is 13.3 feet, which is less than the height of the existing building at 14.6, so that requirement is met. The accessory building shall not be used as a dwelling unit. The applicant states that the building is to be used as a garage, so there's no kitchen or any other thing that would specify as a dwelling unit. The roof pitch of the accessory building shall be the same as the predominant roof pitch of the primary structure. Again, measured them both out, or the existing at 412, and the plans clearly show 412 on the proposed structure. So, not a problem there. An accessory building shall not be located on a lot not occupied by a primary building except on lots larger than 2 acres in size. The proposed building is located on a lot occupied by a primary building, and it is exactly 2 acres in size, so it's not over 2 acres. So there you Primary building on a residential lot is destroyed or removed and not rebuilt within a 2-year period from the time of destruction or removal, then the accessory building shall be removed as well. The applicant has been told this, that if for whatever reason a tornado comes through or termites eat the main house and you don't rebuild it within 2 years, you'll have to tear the accessory structure down as well. So that's been read into the record. And the accessory buildings approved as a special permit use should not exceed in size the greater of 50% of the gross floor area of the primary building or 10% of the total recorded lot area. The proposed building is 1,000 square feet. 10% of the total recorded lot area is 8,712 square feet. Therefore, the proposed construction is well within the maximum size limitations. Not a problem there either. We received no protest, either verbal or written. The conclusions, the only thing that was even in question was the comprehensive plan ambiguity and any aesthetic concerns that might be associated with a metal building. These were discussed at length at the Planning and Zoning Commission, who heard this vote or this item on the 16th of June. They voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the special use permit. I can only say, again, they talked about the comprehensive plan. Since there weren't any specific ordinances in place, and since this application had been started prior to the adoption of the comprehensive plan, they didn't think it would be right to hold this applicant to those problems. As well as far as the aesthetics, nobody had any problem with that, especially since this lot is so large and it will be set so far back. They didn't see any reason to be concerned with that as well. I believe that concludes anything I have. I would be happy to answer any questions. As the mayor pointed out, this is a public hearing, so I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunities to ask questions of applicants and others as well.
I do have one question. At other locations on council, prior to the comprehensive plan, when we've had metal buildings, in some cases, and by the way, I agree with you that for a metal building, this is a good-looking metal building. I'm more excited about the building than the stamp. That is important. I think that I would like to know how much of a hardship on the applicant it would be to cover the front of that building from the street, the view from the street. I know that I agree that the comprehensive plan not being in place at the time that the permit was applied for, that we really shouldn't possibly worry too much about trying to hold them accountable to the comprehensive plan. But for a very long time, we have known that we were going to do something different, or hope to do something different along council. And at the way it does stand now, we're looking at commercial, and the metal building to me is more industrial. And I certainly don't want to see industrial on council. That's my personal preference, and I don't think my ward, most people in my ward would want that either. So I think if we could maybe talk about the possibility of, I don't want to use the word hide, but basically that's what it would be, like we've done in some other locations on council.
And in answer to the question, I really wouldn't be able to tell you how
Did
much
you say
financial.
the applicant's here?
I believe so. Yeah, there he is.
So I don't
So-
know if that's something that we could talk about.
I don't think as far as the comprehensive plan and the future use of the commercial, I mean, this would neither encourage or discourage future commercial use, because that is a prime location for commercial use. But and I hope somebody comes along soon and offers a boatload of money to purchase this, to put up a, well, it's not going to be 7-Eleven there down the street, but some type of retail. I mean, they're just going to doze it all, and I don't see how this would encourage or discourage any commercial use on there in the future.
I did go by and look at the property. It's easy to see, and I think a metal building or almost anything will be an improvement over what's there now. So, and if someone else buys it for commercial, I'm sure they'll take it all down.
I have a question of the applicant, if we could.
I've got a question. You mentioned the square footage is 1,000 square foot,
Yes, sir.
and the house is what?
Right, just shy of 1,500.
So this building is larger than 50% of the house.
Yes, it is.
And you said something about 8,000 square feet?
Right. 10% of the lot area is 8,700 and some change. And the,
Well, if it's a 2-acre lot, shouldn't it be a little more square footage than that?
1 acre is 43,563 times 2, and then 10% of that's
So if he could put up to, what, a
Up-
9,000 square foot?
up to 8,713 or whatever that is, yeah.
So I'm trying to get this in my own mind. So we have two standards here that can be, if it doesn't meet one, it can meet the other.
It clearly states the greater of
And
either
greater-
one of those,
and
yes.
or. Okay. And this appears to have a driveway that goes to this existing
Yes.
building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. What is this line that crisscrosses the area here at about halfway back?
Are you talking about the solid line that's running straight across?
Yes, it runs north to south.
I guess I don't see it.
Like, Are they going to put in their own water line also? It shows a water line there.
As far as I know, there's already the utilities
Water
going to
line,
the.
water line to that building. They have a water line that goes across another, it looks like a lot that's, this is,
Looks like it's on
confusing
page
me.
12 he's looking at, Steve. Page 12.
It's
I
a,
think.
it's a dash
Page
line that
12.
runs at an angle.
Okay, page 12.
I believe that's what he's looking at.
I'm looking at page 12, yes.
Page, okay.
Overhead
It was the one immediately
What's this
preceding
W
your
here, though?
pretty stamped drawings.
Okay.
after this
The site plan drawing.
It says overhead electrical.
That's OE, yeah, that's overhead electric.
Okay, overhead electric. So the electricity's coming from there across that other lot.
No,
Okay, this is all, this never
this
has
is
been
one lot.
subdivided.
That's correct.
Okay, so the fact that there's four different pieces, it looks to me on my plan, there's 4 different pieces of property here.
There is one
It's one.
unplatted parcel, one.
It's 18,000 square, or what, not 18,000.
87,000.
87,000
And some
square feet
change,
there.
yes.
Okay, that's the size of it. That's what we hold it at. Okay, I don't have any problem with that.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, Mr. Neal, could you please come to the podium? Mr. Moore, go ahead with your question.
Hello. I've just got a question. I want to make sure you're aware of it. The entire property's for sale right now or just part of it?
Part of it, maybe.
The only reason is,
I haven't even decided where I'm going to yet or not.
well, I just wanted to make sure you're aware that it looks like if you did subdivide it, that you'd be tearing down that building after you built it. Is that,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
if you subdivide that property, you might have to tear it down if you subdivide that property.
garage?
Right.
Why?
Well, no, I'm just saying, that I'm just reading this. Just want to make sure you know if you subdivided it, it could create some legal issues, I believe. David, am I correct?
Well, I don't think it'd exceed the maximum size, even if he split it, because if he created 2 1-acre lots, he could still build a
4,300.
pardon me, 4,300 square foot building.
Okay, I just want to make sure in my notes,
Yeah.
and this is not my doing. It says there's currently a for sale sign in the south, half the property. The property has not been subdivided. It would be a violation of Code 154.20 of the City of Bethany Code of Ordinances for any portion of the property to be sold as a separate parcel.
Well, only he'd have to get approval here to do that. That's all
Okay.
that's saying.
Okay. I read that wrong.
That'd probably be a minor subdivision he'd have to apply for if he wanted to split the property, but that would require approval.
Good. We got that settled then, so you don't have to worry about it.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Mr. Neal, do you have any comments or questions of us?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. This is a public hearing item, so I'll open the floor for any comments from the public.
Can you think me questions?
We're happy.
Okay, you guys can sit down then. Council, I'll take a motion on item 3 then.
I'll make a motion that we approve the special use permit.
Okay,
I'll second that.
We have a motion for approval and a second. Is there any further questions or discussion? Please post your votes. Thank you. Items 4 and 5, also public hearing items. Item 4 is consideration and possible approval of a site plan request by Bethany Public Schools for the STEM building to be located on North Asbury Avenue between Northwest 42nd Street and Northwest 46th Street.
Mayor, I'd like to ask Mr. Caton, do you think it would be effective to consider both these items at the same time? I mean, even though they're listed as separate items, they're in the same general location. I just thought maybe.
They have different issues. Judging from what happened at planning and zoning, the second one goes much faster than the first one because of the similarities of the case, but we can certainly do them both at the same time if you want.
I think it'd be up to the council. I was just inquiring.
They have different recommendations from P&C. I think that would just muddy it, maybe.
Unless the council wants to hear them together, I'd just proceed separately then.
I would prefer they be separately.
We'll go ahead with item 4, then the STEM building.
Go ahead.
As the agenda says, this item is a site plan application by Bethany Public Schools for a proposed STEM facility to be built on North Asbury. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, if anybody's wondering what a STEM is. I hope everybody got the little supplemental report. It talked about, in the big report that you've seen, had 8 items. Some of them are in process. A couple of them have been resolved. I just wanted to give you a heads up about those as we go. When I reach one that I feel has been resolved, we probably won't spend any time on it and just move on unless you have specific discussion items you want. The Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155, requires the approval of the site plan by either me or the City Council. Those are the only 2 entities that can approve a site plan. It also talks about specific requirements of a site plan if they want me to approve it. Unfortunately, there are certain potential deficiencies of this site plan that do not allow me to approve it. If I did, I would be exceeding the authority this council has granted me. Any site plan approval, therefore, must come from the City Council after review by Planning and Zoning. Again, that is why we are here tonight. This is an aerial photo. This is the main Bethany Public Schools campus. The STEM building is going to be in this red square on the other side of Asbury. It's right now, this aerial still shows 2 single-family residences. They have been demolished, and so they're long gone. This is Northwest 43rd Street. Here's my little arrow. There it is. 43rd Street right here, and there's Asbury right there. Okay, current zoning is R1. Accredited public school is a specifically listed allowable use in R1. No problems there. Comprehensive plan strategy map shows hospitals, universities, schools, and churches. Again, no problem there. The targeted districts map, it's shown as public institutional. Again, no problems. The current, or a plat, these 2 parcels were originally platted as part of the state school land acreage tracts, and the applicant has submitted sufficient documentation to determine the land was legally subdivided. The utilities, there's a water line going down Asbury. That water line is 4 inches in diameter. This line does not meet current city or state standards for a water main, nor would state regulations or engineering standards allow the addition of a fire hydrant on an existing 4-inch line. The applicant has submitted plans for a water main reconstruction project. It'll basically be an 8-inch main. The water lines, the latest version was turned in today, and they are under review at this time. There was just one little change still needing to be done, so I don't expect there to be any problems, but they have not been formally reviewed at this time. That probably can be handled administratively, but it was part of the P&Z recommendation that we'll get to at that point. Sanitary sewer, there's an 8-inch line running along the east property line along the back. The 8-inch line meets current city and state standards, so there's no issue there. This is a site plan drawing. We'll just kind of run over it and talk about, down here is the main Phase 1 structure. The building is right here. This is the property line way down here, up there to there, and over to there, that square. I do want to point out that it's not shown on here, but some of the documentation does show a Phase 2 building, which will basically line up with this one along the rear and go up to the side setback here and over and down. So the applicant does want to consider Phase 2 along with Phase 1. We've taken that into account in any parking calculations as well as any drainage calculations for the additional impervious area. I just want it in the record that this site plan does include Phase 2, so if they decide to build that out in the future, they don't have to come back and do this again. So just want to make sure everybody understands that. The existing property line separating these two right here no longer exists. They've taken care of that with the restrictive covenant, so that's good. They have proposed 13 parking spaces, 1 handicap accessible. They proposed a sidewalk out front. This being a residential street, it's not necessarily required by ordinance, but they went ahead and put one in anyway because of the use. In the back, there's an existing 5-foot easement here and a 5-foot easement on the other side. We'll get to that later. The proposed facade is basically brick and ephes. This property is zoned R1, which means it is not have to meet the requirements of the facade ordinance, but it would if it did. So that's another big plus. The landscaping also meets the requirements of your new landscaping ordinance. That one tree right there meets the requirement, as well as the grass that's going to be in these areas here. So that's all good. This is a grading plan. Other than for the benefit of all the other engineers in the audience who love grading plans, this one is put here to show that they are using the parking lot as detention. So they will be basically letting this parking lot fill up with water as the storm, and then it will slowly be released out onto Asbury where it would have gone anyway at a rate that will not exceed the historic rate for the 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storm events. So that also has been a point we need to discuss later. The site plan deficiencies were transmitted basically back in April. The initial review went back to the applicant. Most of the items on the review were corrected by the applicant on the subsequent revised drawings. That there are still some potential deficiencies that prohibit approval by myself. Those might be the restricted covenant's been resolved. The existing utility easement width, just now, at the beginning of this meeting, I was handed a utility easement with all the right signatures on it. You will have that in front of you at the next meeting on your consent docket for approval so that we can go file it. So for all practical purposes, that one is resolved as well. Mr. Davis has reviewed the document for form, and it looks legal. So that one is gone ahead and gone away as far as I'm concerned. The solid waste dumpsters, there is no proposed solid waste dumpster at the STEM project. The applicant has stated they intend to use existing solid waste facilities on the main campus property across Asbury. The off-street parking, the site plan ordinance or the parking ordinance is very clear that in this case the Planning and Zoning Commission will determine the parking load, which they did, and they've determined that the proposed 13 spaces is adequate. So as far as community development is concerned, that has been resolved as well. Fire hydrant location, the ordinance requires that all parts of the proposed construction be within 300 feet of a fire hydrant. These buildings or the current building and the future would be more than 300 feet. Again, the applicant has submitted plans for a water main extension that includes a new fire hydrant well within the required 300. Again, we just got the latest revision today, so those plans are still under review. I don't expect any trouble at this point. The drainage design, the applicant just submitted iteration 3 of that this morning as well. If he carried out what we talked about and what he was going to do, I've already modeled it with those revisions, so that should be as good as well. But at this time, the drainage is still under review. Existing water line sizing, again, it's a 4-inch line, doesn't meet any standards. We can't put a fire hydrant on it or anything else. They've proposed the plans, they're under review, and we will submit them whenever everybody is happy with them. And last but not least, the existing right-of-way on Asbury is only 40 feet wide. Current regulations require a right-of-way width of 50 feet for a local street. No right-of-way grant has been submitted. We did follow up and confirm that the applicant does not or desires to not grant additional right-of-way. Those are the issues that were outstanding, prohibiting me from approving the site plan. The site plan ordinance is designed this way. It's very specific. Says if you want staff to be able to approve it, here's what you have to do. If you don't want to do even one of those things, then I would not have authority to do it, and I would be breaking the law if I did approve it. But it still retains the flexibility that you guys need. If you decide that there's something special about a project that they shouldn't have to do that, it's totally legal. It's well within your authority and well within appropriate things for you to approve a site plan. Just because I can't doesn't mean you can. That was more for the P&Z, but basically you can review each of these things individually, collectively, however you want to do it. That's up to you. The Planning and Zoning did hear this item at the regular meeting on June 16th and voted 6-0 to 1 to recommend approval with contingencies. Basically, there's the list of them. They approved 13 parking spaces. They approved it contingent on staff and the ODEQ approving the improved water line and fire hydrant plans. Staff approval of the drainage plans, granting of an additional 5 feet of utility easement along the rear or east property line. And even though it's not a contingency, I put it up there just to make sure you got note of it. They recommended approval without the dumpster pad and with no additional right-of-way requirement. So those are the recommendations from Planning and Zoning. So the required action, of course, is that consider the possible deficiencies, and there's another listed. You're probably sick of looking at them by now, but there they are. And you basically have 4 choices. You can either continue this item until they've met certain conditions or some other triggering event. You could recommend a denial based on the deficiencies. You can recommend approval as is. And last but not least, you can recommend approval with conditions. If you do recommend approval with conditions, I would only ask that you be very, very specific about those conditions because I will enforce them however. And if it's ambiguous as to what you wanted, I will always fail on the side of safety. I will make sure that the most restrictive thing has to be done because I don't want to do the wrong thing unless somebody do something that you didn't want to happen. So if you choose to go with conditions, please read those into the record so I'll have something to go on what needs to be done before we can issue that or approve that site plan. And I believe that concludes my remarks. I would be happy to answer any questions or provide whatever information I might.
Council members, any questions of Mr. Caton or staff?
I'd like to ask some questions if I could.
Go ahead.
Mr. Caton, this right-of-way business, can you go into detail and explain what is meant by right-of-way width and why we have right-of-way widths?
Well, the most basic reason we have the right-of-ways is for the street, for the public to be able to have a right-of-way across to get from one place to another. In addition, that's where we put a lot of our utilities, specifically water lines and gas lines are usually, a lot of them are out in the street. It's a bad idea to put them under the pavement because if you have to do repairs, you have to tear up the street and repair it, and it costs a lot more money, so they like to have those out there. a long, long time ago, a normal 26-foot wide street would have a 40-foot wide right-of-way. Back then, a water line, maybe a gas line, and that was all fine, and they would put it in there. In the last several decades, there have been new regulations come out that specify certain minimum spacings between various utilities. For instance, a water line is not supposed to be within 5 feet of any other utility line, and some of the others have those same kind of regulations that they didn't have back in the old days. So it has become standard practice, and your ordinances reflect it, that for a normal residential street, instead of being a 40-foot minimum right-of-way width, they want 50 now. For a collector street, instead of being 40, and now they want 60. It just different kinds of uses have different right-of-way requirements for various paving widths, various types of utilities that are in there, and that sort of thing. For instance, drainage used to be a lot less stringent, and now we're used to an 18-inch pipe might have been fine. Now it'll be a 48-inch pipe, so you need a much bigger right-of-way to dig that kind of a hole. So as societal standards have changed, so have the requirements for various rights of way. That's in a nutshell.
Then what you're saying is that you're asking for an additional 5 foot,
That's correct.
and they already have approximately 7.5 feet of outside this right of way.
20 minus, they have about 7 feet from the back of the curb to the property line, yes.
Property line. So you're looking at that. I'm well aware of the congestion that goes into that. Now, they're being required to put in a 8-inch water main from 43rd Street,
They're going to be coming north from 43rd.
and clear to northwest 46th Street.
No, sir. They will be basically coming up to the north edge of their property and tying in to the existing four at that point.
Substandard, they'll be tying into a substandard.
That is correct, but since that's the limit of their development, that you would have no statutory authority. When I say that, I want to caveat. They've turned in a hydraulic analysis that shows this will be adequate, but until ODEQ says it'll be adequate, it may not be. Until they get that permit, we don't know. Their engineer has submitted one that says it is, so we have no reason to think it won't at this point. But at that time, they may have to come back and loop it all the way to 46 to get the fire flows that DEQ wants. That could happen. I've seen that before.
That's one more deficiency that is being tacked onto this.
Well, the planning and zoning was very clear on their recommendation on the water line that it be approved not only by staff but also by DEQ.
Well, that's true. It has to be. We have
Right.
to have all.
Right.
We can't step outside the house.
Can't build it without a DEQ permit.
DEQ.
Right.
So that would have to take place. Now, they would have to take out this 4-inch water main and run this 8-inch up through there.
Yeah, they proposed to cut and cap and abandon the 4-inch and put the services that were on the
Just
floor.
cut and cap and
Cut and cap it, yeah.
Which end are they going to abandon?
Well, they're going to be tying in on the north end, so they're going to be cutting and capping down on the south end at 43rd Street.
They're going to cap on 43rd Street.
Down near 43rd Street, and then it'll be abandoned from there up to where it ties into the new.
Okay, so we won't have a like we have on 38th and North Asbury. We have a jumble of lines that runs in under those.
Mr. Shirey, in that part of town, we don't know what we're going to find when we dig a hole. There may be a bowl of spaghetti up there, as far as I know.
We want an objective look at this to make sure that we do not have the problems that we have now. If we ever broke a line at that particular location, the funeral home would be shut down for 2 years when we try to find out where we're at. So but there are no other requirements between 43rd Street and this property that they're going to build a new STEM building on that's been right away allowed.
I'm not sure I understand.
The childhood center there, whatever that is, that's on the east side of Asbury, it's 43rd Street. They're going to build a STEM building next to that. So there is no right, there's no, this the 5 foot additional right of way is not taken out of there.
This is a standalone project. It's not linked to the
How
other
come we
one.
How come we didn't do that at that time?
Well, Mr. Shirey, you were on the council. Maybe you should ask
Or
yourself.
maybe I should, yes.
I
But I
don't-
don't think I would have voted for that at that time.
I don't know.
I mean,
I wasn't in
it's
this
very-
position at the time, so I
think
can't
if
tell
I
you.
could check, I probably
Okay.
would have said something about that. But you're not requiring them to width, the pavement doesn't get any wider.
First of all, I'm not requiring anything. The ordinance says
I know
these
you're-
things have to be in
but
place if I can approve it.
You're laying this out.
What I'm saying
that our
is, the
requirements are.
ordinance currently requires a paving width of 26 feet on a local street, which is what this is designated on the comprehensive plan, as a local street. So the current paving meets current standards. It's 26 feet wide, Portland cement concrete, curb and gutter, nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong.
The right-of-way, however, the ordinance is also very clear on that it would be required to be 50 feet. And traditionally, this is the time we get the right-of-way at time of development, but it's well within the council's authority to not require it.
So the right of way is just, they'd be giving us 5 foot by whatever the length of
That's
those-
correct.
That's all. And but we would have that right of way if anything ever had to take place. Say we wanted to build a wider street there to accommodate the traffic that is generated in and around that school.
In general, that is why we get additional right-of-way at time of development, so if you need it in the future, it would be available and it would meet current standards.
And
But
and the city would not be required to go purchase that right of way.
that's correct.
So it's okay. Yeah, I see that. But since the school owns that other piece of property to the south of there, could they be required under this to give us this?
I think you missed your chance on that one.
You think we missed our chance?
yeah.
Okay. And we're not requiring any right-of-way across the street, the 5 foot on the west side of the street.
You'll see when we get to that one, that same right-of-way deficiency exists for this project across the street. And the Planning and Zoning Commission made the same recommendation on that.
They recommended to the council that we not accept that.
That you approve the site plan with the right-of-way as it is, not require them to give extra right-of-way. That is what they recommend.
Do you foresee in the, well, let's say not so distant future, the widening of Asbury Street from 46 to 42nd?
I am not aware of any plans for any such widening or reconstruction.
Well, I know they're not on your board, and you don't have them every morning you have to look at, okay. But there's a possibility that would be because of the congestion is so great in that area.
And
certain
that
times
is
during
true,
the day.
but in the defense of Bethany Public Schools, that's almost universal with every school in the city. Not saying that it's not better or worse there, but lots of other schools have a similar problem. The only one I know of is Western Oaks that built a whole new queuing area to try to alleviate that.
That's
Yeah.
been recent.
Yes.
They tried to take that into consideration when they put their driveway out at the top of the hill
Yeah.
instead of at the bottom of the hill.
Mr. Shire, the odds of it, it's possible, but it's probably not probable that that's gonna happen, a widening of that street. It's not really that probable that's gonna happen.
It's not probable it's gonna happen.
I don't believe it's that probable unless you wanna get eminent domain involved, and as
Well-
someone said, buy the porches. It might be all the way up into people's houses.
Because you're telling me that's built out, that school has been built and there's nothing else to be built on that particular piece of land.
Well, I'm
No, I
not saying
think-
anything, I'm just saying we'd be into their houses, some of the houses there.
The existing
I,
homes.
I think the issue is that probably should have been handled decades ago, or half a
5
century
years
ago.
ago or whatever, yeah.
I have a couple of questions if you're
I think,
there.
I will yield to you at this time, but I may want to come back.
You can reserve the right to come
Go
back.
back. I
Thank
reserve
you.
the right to return.
I appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
I know that the planning and zoning recommended no requirements on the on-site dumpster pad, but I would like to know how far away the main dumpster area is that they're going to be taking their trash.
The ones I know of they're on the main campus. There's one down towards the elementary end, and there's another one that's up closer to the high school end. I'm assuming the
That's
high
correct.
school end would be closer,
Several hundred feet?
600-800 feet would be my guess.
And
Councilmember
are they-
Larson?
Are they taking the trash from the outside, or are they going to run it through the building?
Councilmember Larson, I believe, and if there's someone here that can correct me if I'm incorrect, they are currently taking their trash over to the other dumpster now. They do not have a dumpster pad currently at the ECC. And I believe they have lunches there, so they do have trash that they take across. I don't know that the STEM building would create as much trash as the ECC is, so I just want you to know that they're currently doing that now.
Okay. Then, and I just want to be sure that we're not going to have out of the trash and it's going to be blowing around up in District 2, Ward 2. The other, regarding the parking, in reading over the planning and zoning minutes, says that they have, the school has a agreement with the church for additional parking. And this may not be for you, it may be for someone that's here. Is that agreement in writing, or is it a handshake deal, or, is it formal? I mean, I'm just curious about that. Does anybody know? It's in writing or not? So it's a handshake deal? Okay. And then, I am curious, either from our attorney or Mr. Caton, if, I think that applicants are supposed to have their information to us a certain period of time before it's considered. I know by planning and zoning, do we have that same requirement with the council? I mean, you're telling me that we've got documents less than 12 hours ago for our staff to review, and this has been going on since April. And I would like to be sure that when we as a council make decisions, we have all the information before us. So if we have not had adequate time to do that, maybe one item that we should consider is tabling this until everybody gets their ducks in a row. Because I am not comfortable making decisions when we still have staff that needs to be reviewing it, whether it's matching our ordinances or not. So I'll entertain some conversation about that.
Well, we accepted in contingent of the fact that OEDQ, the state, is very slow to respond, so as far as them approving that
That's not the
water-
only thing to review. He's
But
got
I-
4 or 5
I-
other items to review.
Yeah, but the plan goes for all of them. It's in contingent of. That's what planning is only recommended.
Yeah, I think that we're not being very good stewards until we have all the information, because there's too many things that you're asking to put
As
a tremendous amount of accountability and decision-making on our staff. And I really think that this is the council decision, and that we should have all of our information before us before we make a decision.
so,
Ms. Larson, I think you're exactly right, and in the past, I think that that's happened in the past. There's a bond issue we're talking about, and when there's
Well, we're
nothing.
talking 2 weeks, 2 weeks.
I understand,
We've
but-
got another council member,
But
meeting.
we're also not leaving anything up to somebody else too, just like John said. I mean, we're saying it's contingent upon 8 inches, being approved.
Right.
So we're not leaving that 2, 4, 6, 8 inch up to anybody. We're saying it's got to be, or it's just, it is or it isn't.
the drainage approval of that, I know nothing about drainage, so even if the plan was approved, I don't know what I'm looking at anyway. I'm just
My-
going by
You're
Mr.
looking,
Caton.
you're looking at an engineer
But he
saying
needs the
it
time
will
to
work, and
review
you're
it.
looking at his stamp. That's what you're looking at, and we don't have that stamp in front of us. This is premature at best. We're sitting here looking at 14 different things that were sent to us tonight that needed to be revised, and only 8 of them have been revised. So almost half of them are waiting out there in the wings to get revised, and we have no idea what they are. And I just got my wings clipped because I can't remember what I did 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm getting to the point that I'm getting a little more educated every week on what I have to do here. And if you don't get your ducks in a row, you've got a big problem. And one of the things that we just mentioned just confounded me. We've got an agreement with Southern Nazarene that they could use our parking lot if they have to. That's nebulous. We don't know. But that should be in this.
I don't think that was what he said. I think it's with Bethany First Church, is it
Well,
not?
is it with somebody else?
It's with Bethany First Church.
Okay, Bethany First Church. Well, I'm sorry, Bethany First Church. But one or the other, I think this should be incorporated into this particular document.
You also have the issue that, thankfully, we have Mr. Caton in the position he's in right now. There are no certainties in life. If something happens to him, he takes another job, if he has an accident, somebody's in that position, they may not. I don't want to set ourselves open to be dependent on somebody else making a mistake in the process. And I think that, I just think that we need to have all the information before us before we make a decision. And I think that the architect and the school can probably, I think the 2 weeks would give them plenty of time to do that. It's not being unrealistic. It should have been, I take it, when I found out today that the staff received information less than 24, and I don't know what the requirement is before it goes before planning and zoning or council that we're supposed to have. I think we get this normally on Friday, and sometimes we get additional information. But, staff has other things to do than just be at the mercy of one entity. They have a tremendous amount of work. And to get something before a council meeting or 10 or 12 hours before it's required, I think that we need to say, okay, give us time to review this. And y'all don't feel that way, that's your choice. But I am not comfortable until we have all our information before us.
Well, in all reality, we're relying on staff for that information anyway. I mean, as Councilmember Herron mentioned, no one on this board is qualified as an engineer that I'm aware of anyway. I don't think anybody sitting here is a PE. To be able to look at that and say whether it is or isn't going to meet drainage calculations. Mr. Shire's correct. I mean, we're looking at a stamp, but I mean, staff is already going to look at that and then make a recommendation to council. So it's no different whether we approve it contingent upon staff doing that or have staff do it and then give it to us. It's the same end result. It just allows them to get down the road a couple of weeks quicker, possibly. If DEQ was to get those things in, if they were to get the other contingencies done, they're down the road quicker. DEQ could take longer, who knows? But
if I might, I hope everyone in their packet got a copy of this memo, and maybe that could explain it a little bit. You're right, Mrs. Larson. Under normal circumstances, this would not have gone to planning and zoning in its current form. I would have made an applicant get me more paperwork. Ultimately, we may get to a point where they don't want to do anymore, and now we go ahead, even though there may be some loose ends. I don't know, but in this particular case, with the applicant being Bethany Public Schools, they do have unique funding and other scheduling requirements, so I probably pulled the trigger too early on that, and for that I am sorry. And I won't do it again if that's, I agree with you, we should have more information before you guys have to make a decision.
It's not just Bethany Public Schools.
I
It's
understand.
anybody that comes before
I
the
understand.
council.
I understand.
Get your ducks in a row before you come to us.
Absolutely.
And we
And you
expect
count
staff to
on,
make sure they
and
know
you
that.
count on me to make sure as a gatekeeper, and I probably should have done a better job on this one. But again, we were trying to be more accommodating. As an excuse, I can offer Mr. Harsman dragged me up here right as this was being turned in, so I was still real new at it, so
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sorry.
I don't fault you. It's not, it's just that if you're not getting the information provided to you.
Right.
Then you can only do so
And-
much.
And I probably should have demanded that they have a certain minimum in before I put it on an agenda. Absolutely. I can't say any more than that. You're
Steve?
absolutely right.
Steve, I have another
this
question
is
to
a-
get us back on the task at hand. When phase 2 of this proposal goes into effect,
Mm-hmm.
does the drainage and the parking still work in the
The
calculations?
current drainage plan that I've seen definitely takes into account that additional impervious area draining in there, yeah. So before, if, let's say for whatever reason they don't ever build phase 2, you're gonna have way more detention capacity than you would need. So it'll be a plus at that point, but it is designed for the entire build out, yes.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify one thing as far as the parking goes. There will, and I think this is a question for you from the schools, there will be no additional students or staff for this, is that correct? So
Yeah.
the
Parking's
parking,
irrelevant.
right.
Well, except for,
All it does is help with 13 more places up there.
yeah. But it also, it is totally irrelevant if I understand the process correctly, but it does help us stay within our regulations. But-
The regulation is very clear. It just says basically on this case, public schools, the Planning and Zoning Commission will determine the parking load, and that's what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. But it could literally, without the regulations and the requirements, it could literally not have parking
If
if it
planning
wasn't
and-
required.
Yep.
This building could stand alone.
If Planning and Zoning decided that 0 was
Just have
adequate, then that would be
staff
perfectly
and
allowable.
students walk
Yes.
across the street.
Yes.
Just like
Correct.
the early childhood.
That is correct.
And Kathy, Ms. Larson, and even if you read his memo, I think everybody up here agrees, you're 100% correct on we should have it all in place. But it snuck by. And we get to fill in the blanks even now too. Instead of looking at a plan, we get to tell them what the last few are, whatever you like. It's a bond issue too, which does create some special issues.
Well, if they hadn't have gone for the bond issue until they had all their ducks in a row, then maybe some of this wouldn't be where we were. I just think that, so you know how I feel.
So there's a lot more people guilty of rushing things to a bond issue.
Well, I would
And then-
caution you on that we just did a bond issue and we don't have full plans for a library, so.
We don't have
I mean,
full plans
that-
for it
Exactly.
right now.
I don't think we want to bring that up.
And as far as
Or we're throwing
We did.
rocks tonight.
the items that are contingent upon staff approval, staff could approve those anyway without our consent. There's only 2 items that they're really asking for, is the dumpster and the right-of-way. Everything else, staff is approving, and staff would have been approved under normal circumstances to approve those anyway.
Assessor Andrea review.
Yeah, but I mean, those are items that wouldn't have to come to us anyway.
The beauty of it too is it won't happen again because Steve's not gonna let it happen again. That's the beauty of it.
But the right of way is a no problem deal. They're just going to say, yeah, you can have that right of way, and they do nothing after that. But what are they going to do after they give us a right of way?
Okay, this is a public hearing item. I will open the floor for comments from the public. The applicant, staff, and architect are here. I'll first ask if anyone of the public cares to address the council on this issue. Mr. Rhodes, do you care to make any comments, or do you have anything to present, or?
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay.
I can talk a little bit about parking if I need to, and the dumpsters.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
I would like to just make a couple of comments just on, I guess, procedure. Several years ago, Planning and Zoning had requested that they receive all their information before an item was brought to them, so that they would have all their information, so that they could make an educated vote on what they were looking at. So I see nothing wrong with that. I think that's a good procedure. And I do believe it says in, I think it's section 155, that all the items should be brought to the Planning and Zoning 14 days before the meeting, so that it gives staff plenty of time to review. I think communication is the key thing in all of this. Bethany Schools is a great entity, but we do have to have all of our information so that Bethany Schools, the citizens, the city, we can all go ahead and have the streets, the utilities, the facility, the school, the classrooms, everything that we need, and it works together well. I think we just need to get together beforehand. I'm not really sure what has happened kind of in the breakdown of communication, but I think that is a very important thing, and I do want the information at hand before we vote on items. I had actually mentioned this back a few weeks ago when we voted on the comp plan, and we didn't have everything on the comp plan that I thought we should have yet, but we went ahead and voted for the comp plan. That's going to be some of my questions here in a little bit, to see if we've gotten our information that was requested for that. So again, the contingencies, I'd rather not have those contingent upon, we're voting yes, contingent upon this or that being done. But I think what we need to do is to go forward from here and make sure that we do have those lines of communication open and have all of our information together ahead of time. There was one item, the contingent, the rear easement. Mr. Caton? Did you say you did receive that and it was assigned?
Right here in my file.
Okay, so you do have that?
Yes, it was delivered at the beginning of the meeting, yeah. It
Okay.
has the proper signatures. Mr. Davis has looked at for form and
Okay.
legality, and it looks good. It just has to be approved by this body on the consent docket 2 weeks from now, and we will send it to the courthouse for filing.
Okay. Then the fire hydrant, you've got the information on that. DEQ has the information, they're reviewing this too?
As soon as the staff review is complete, and that includes Public Works, utility people, for any last-minute changes they might want, as soon as that's done, we will submit it to DEQ for permitting and probably put it, again, before this body for your approval of the project as well.
Okay, and the drainage, you have that? You're reviewing
Yeah,
the
again,
drainage
I
and it
got
looked
the
good?
final, or the latest revision is on my desk right now for review. There was only a little bit of change to the grading, and if he did what he said he was going to do, I've already run the models independently, and I'm confident that it will meet my stringent requirements for that.
Okay.
When did you receive that notice? When did you receive that?
Well, officially, I received it this morning, but I had been in communication with the engineer last week about his previous submittal, and his models weren't agreeing with mine, and so we discussed what needed to be changed, and he has submitted a new grading plan that would reflect those changes. But I haven't had a chance to make sure that it matches up exactly to what he had promised. So until I can do that, I can't say that I
Put it
can.
through your sophisticated equipment to make sure that it works.
Yes, sir.
You have not, though.
I absolutely use the SCSTR 55 unit hydrograph method, and the other engineers hate me for it. But that's the most defendable one I can think of in court because it works. The other stuff isn't as good. So there you go.
Okay, and so then the water line plans were
Yes.
also submitted.
Yeah,
And I mean,
The
you're
fire
revising.
hydrant and water line are the same set of plans, yes.
Okay. So everything that we just talked about is, it's contingent upon.
The applicant
Okay.
has said they are going to comply, and they're making progress towards that, yes.
Okay, so the only other thing that we need to talk about is the right-of-way width, but planning and zoning approved it without the additional width.
Actually, two. The solid waste dumpster and the right-of-way were the two things that the applicant has said, we don't want to do that. And planning and zoning recommended both of those, that they not have to do that. So yes, those are the only two outstanding items that the applicant doesn't want to do and is not making progress toward, yes.
Okay.
Are
And
those two items required for a site plan?
Those two items would be required for me to be able to approve them. They are not required for any site plan that you want to approve. You can approve any site plan you want, whether it has any of these items at all. That's the flexibility that's built into your ordinance.
so the right-of-way width, that would be, again, if we wanted to go in and put in new water lines for the,
Yes.
would we need to be doing that? There's not any housing there. It's the school. Will they need more, larger water lines?
According
If
to
there's-
their engineer's drawings, they don't need any additional because they're putting the new water line in the existing right-of-way. Again, it's kind of scary when you start digging holes up there and what you're going to find, but
So what you're saying, what do you mean when you say that?
there's all kinds of pipes and things underground in the old part of Bethany that nobody bothered to draw on a map.
We have no as-bills for it.
Right, and
So we
whenever
dig
they
and we
get
hit
ready to-
stuff.
So when they get ready to put the new 8-inch in, there may be a issue?
that's true with any project. This is not unique, but there could be.
It wouldn't matter whether that was the city putting something in or whether it was a private entity putting it in. The
Right.
risk exists just because we don't have records of a lot of the
But
stuff
that
that's up
doesn't
there.
have anything to do with the right-of-way that I'm talking about now.
No, other than, the bigger the right-of-way, the more room, if there happens to be something where you wanted to put your pipe, you can move it over easier, but otherwise, that's kind of normal when
Okay,
you
so
dig.
you are saying there could become an issue while they're putting in the new water line, that we would need that other 5 feet of right-of-way, is
it's-
what you're saying?
Yeah, if you're talking about what could be possible, yes. We've had to move out under the pavement before because there was a gas
So
line
if we
or
don't
something.
have that right-of-way and we would have to go in and do something, what happens then?
We would, normally, what happened to the neighborhood to the west of the school, we put the pipe out in the pavement. You can go see this strip of pavement
Okay,
repair
yeah.
where they just put it out under the street because we didn't have enough right-of-way to put it in over there. DEQ
So-
would not approve the plan.
So again, that would just be more expense to do
Correct.
that. And again, if something would break or we'd have to go in again later, it's more expense again digging up
That's correct.
out from underneath.
I just have-
Can-
Are you finished? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, can I ask the applicant a question?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure who wants to answer this. All right. I'm not sure I understand, Mr. Rhodes, why, can you explain to me why you don't want to give the extra 5 foot?
The right of way. From what we understand right now, the parking, and this may relate, so let me come back, I'll address the parking, and then I'll answer the question if I could, because I think it does relate to each other.
Okay.
The parking that we currently are showing on the site is 13 spaces, as Mr. Caton pointed out. That truly was just a result of trying to maximize the amount of space that we had on the land to put the most number of parking spaces that we could, knowing that we were trying to also plan for future expansion to the north of what we're planning to build now, which is a 1,000 square foot building. The Early Childhood Center site, just to the south of this, was built with no parking. It's got a drive-through drop-off lane. And so some of the teachers utilize I guess it's the north end of the Bethany First Church parking area, the youth building parking area. And so when the staff started looking at what potential parking spaces might be required on a site like this, because the ordinance, does not specifically have a formula like you do in other kinds of plans. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they went to other areas, other school districts, other jurisdictions, and kind of tried to come up with an average of what they used. And so that came to 14, if I'm not mistaken, and it just happened to be one more than what we showed when we were trying to maximize our parking spaces. So we also did the same evaluation, which we'll talk about probably in the next round, on the main campus. And if my memory serves me correctly, using the same formula that we used on the STEM building on the main campus, we actually have 41 more parking spaces than what would be required on that particular site. And so the 13 that we're adding is actually, would, I guess, make that number 54 more spaces. But I think what I'm tried to explain to planning and zoning was that those 13 spaces that we're providing are for teachers. There's not going to be any students allowed to park on that parking space.
And
or
that's
those parking
teachers
lots.
that are already there. not
Teachers that
adding
are already
any-
there. This building, in fact, this building and all of the other 4 projects that we'll discuss in a little bit are all what I would describe as ancillary or support type spaces. They are provided to the school to enhance what is there, not to add students, teachers, enrollment, or anything like that. And so it's, the STEM building will be utilized by existing teachers and existing students that will then move across the street to be able to take a specific class or do a specific project, and then come back to the main campus and do their rest of their classwork. So the reason I bring up the parking count, I wanted to help maybe answer some of the questions from earlier on parking, but also if the additional 5 foot of right-of-way is provided, then now our parking spaces that we've drawn would extend into that right-of-way, and then we just have to go through the paperwork process of doing the approval for parking on a right-of-way. I think there's a form that we've had to fill out before in the past to do that. But also the idea is that, the same kind of rationale will be talked about, I guess, in the upcoming main campus projects in terms of if that right-of-way were to be expanded on this property and also, potentially on Mueller, then what would that right-of-way potentially do to our property as well as the adjacent properties to the north if a street expansion were to happen? I believe the street, Asbury, is a local street, so I don't think it's ever intended, unless it's upgraded to a collector street, that it would ever have to be widened.
This is my question, and maybe I'm confused.
Sure.
So whoever wants to help me with this, just jump in there, whether it's Mr. Rhodes or Mr. Caton or whoever it may be. So my concern, the reason I asked this question was the concern of the utilities and being able to get in to fix something. Wasn't necessarily the widening of a
Okay.
road. That really wasn't what I was concerned about. So are we talking about 2 separate things, or is that
Well,
all the same thing?
The right-of-way, in my mind, I look at it as though, well, first of all, gas and sanitary in this particular location are on the rear yard, so we don't have to worry about gas or sanitary. Water is the primary one that we're dealing with, and as a part of the project, Bethany Public Schools is going to be building the new water line while the construction on the site is going on. Now, to say that when they dig down and begin that construction that they won't find something and have to shift it, nobody knows until we start digging.
And so, but that's why we might need that extra right-of-way. Is that correct?
That's what it's there for, yes. It gives you more room.
So isn't that a benefit to you? I mean, to me, that seems like a benefit.
It can be, but I think it also just, in our minds, we're also thinking of the existing right-of-way that's there now on the Early Childhood Center that was brought up earlier. It's a 40-foot right-of-way, kind of extending that same right-of-way forward north on this project, just maintaining the right-of-way that's there. I agree with you that that's its purpose and its intent. If the water line that was there now was a 6-inch or an 8-inch line, and we weren't having to do the work to create that new line, and then 5 years from now, something needed to be put in there, or maybe some work needed to be done on that, then it would allow you more room to do that, for sure. But I think at least in my mind, putting in the new line as a part of this new construction, at least for now, would sure eliminate the problem of needing more space, because you've got what I would call brand-new construction in the place of what is there now for a 4-inch pipe that I have no idea how long it's been there, but I don't know if I've answered your question or not.
Well-
Yes, I think that additional right-of-way would be beneficial long-term, potentially, but it all depends on what you don't know what you're going to be running into. And it just creates an offset. We dealt with the same question on the rear yard easement, on the utility easement. Right now, I think it's a 10-foot easement centered on the property line in the back, and we're basically going to have a 10-foot on our property. The adjacent property to the south is going to have 5 foot. The adjacent property to the north is going to have 5 foot, and so now we've got an offset easement as it jogs up and down that property line, and we would have the same thing here.
I'm just thinking sometime that we need to start doing, and maybe I'm not saying this correctly, and I don't mean to be sounding rude, that's not my idea, but sometime we need to start doing these things properly and following the rule of the law to have those, I believe. I mean, that's just my thought, and we've got to start sometime. Is it going to cost you money from your bond issue? Will this cause you an issue dollar-wise? It's not that, is it?
No, ma'am.
You'll lose parking spots if we give more right.
Well, you can still go ahead and do your parking.
You would lose them if you
can
did
still do
not
their
file the
parking.
paperwork for the parking on the right-of-way.
So they can still have their parking. We
And-
could have our right-of-way so that if we needed to do something to help you, this is where I'm coming from. I feel like we need to help you
I think
if
long-term-
we get into a problem.
Long-term, it actually might be detrimental to the school, I suppose, if, I'm trying to think through a scenario down the road, if the additional right-of-way is granted, there is now parking on the right-of-way, work has to be done, now the paving would have to be repaired and paid for by the school.
Well, that was going to be my point on that, was that we would be allowing that, which would put the responsibility on us, basically, if we say, go ahead and build on the right-of-way, and we're going to allow you to do that, allow you to put your paving there. It wouldn't be much different than us cutting into the street. I mean, it would probably be a little cheaper to repair a parking lot than the street, but, I mean, you're still creating a problem of having a structure, i.e. in this concrete or
But it
asphalt.
would just be on this one section that we're my thinking is I'm trying to get us all straightened up, and let's all go down the road the correct way for future projects and get it straightened up. It may be jiggy-jaggy, but let's get it to the point where we're, doing everything in the proper way. That's my only thought, that's my thought process and what I'm trying to do tonight. And that's why I want open lines of communication, discussion, that's why I ask if it's costing you money to do this, if it's gonna, and it's not going to take away your parking, but like you said, you might have to dig up your parking lot, but, we might have to dig up the street, but let's get it, my idea is go ahead and do your parking, and I would like to have that right away, and then get it straightened, and then the future projects keep it, in alignment, because we know what that rule is, we know what the right-of-ways are. But again, yeah, I'm willing to listen. I just wanted to discuss that.
Right.
And know that they can go ahead and have their parking. That's what I wanted to know too.
Well, I've seen something here, looking at this, if you don't mind me jumping in here. I've reserved this time a while ago. The sidewalk that you're going to put in front of the STEM building is going to be how wide?
5 feet. Thank you.
5 feet? So we've got 7 feet from the back of the curb to the right-of-way edge. We put a 5-foot sidewalk in there, and it makes little, if any, difference whether we put another concrete or not. If we ever have to go on our work, we're gonna have to take the sidewalk out. If we had the additional 5 foot, you could move the sidewalk back, or you could leave it there.
Yeah, you would, I guess at that point, you would either be tearing up sidewalk or tearing up parking, because right now, the way that the site is planned, we can't push the building any further to the east because of the rear yard setback.
Yes,
And-
I understand that totally.
And we've maximized the width of the parking in order to be able to have parking where you have an aisle plus 90-degree parking on two sides. It requires about 60 feet. And so by the time you do the building plus the sidewalk near the building, and then the parking, and then the sidewalk near the street, we've maximized that
And
area.
you want the additional parking, or you're going to put an additional building back on the back side of this sometime in the future.
We've at least allowed for it. There is no current, timeline for that. It's just an allowance in case that need were to arise in the future.
So in other words, if this is the case, you would be losing 3 parking places.
No, we've allowed for the new building to be exactly, in place without moving any or damaging or losing any of the parking spaces.
But, if you move the back 5 foot, you would, because you can't move the STEM building back in. It's maximized on the lot, so you'd lose 3 parking places. And you could move the other 10 parking places back 5 foot. But any time that we had to work on that, if something happened to that water main, and that, they do happen, they do blow out, and the sidewalk covers all of it but 2 feet. I'm looking at page 58. Yeah, page 58.
Are there any additional questions of
Another
the applicant?
question. The right-of-way and everything else that we're approving tonight applies to the yet-to-be-built portion, Phase 2 as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, we're trying to approve the entire site plan in its current state and its future state.
So we're not just talking about the STEM building that will be constructed first?
Correct.
But the additional?
Yeah, Phase 1
that's why
and
I
Phase
was
2.
concerned about the right-of-way and going forward.
And that's all within the boundary of, Phase 2 is all within the boundary of this property at this point. So there is no plan at this point to move further north than what the school has, where they own the property today. Does that help? Sure.
I think I'm confused now too a
Okay.
little bit.
Sorry.
We're talking about going back in and fixing the 8-inch water line that's fixing to go in brand new, is that correct?
Well, we're going to install an 8-inch line to replace an existing
So you're
4-inch line.
abandoning the old line?
Yes.
But that new, if we have to go in and repair the 8-inch lines we were talking about, that's gonna be one of the cleanest lines in Bethany. We're gonna know what's in the
It'll be
ditch.
fairly new, yes.
We're not gonna have to worry about it. If we gotta go in and fix it.
And you'll know where it's
you
at.
turn off the water and you fix it. We know exactly what's in that ditch. We got drawings. So we're not talking about going back and not knowing what's there. If they put an 8-inch water line in and it gets hot 5 years from now and the water line breaks, they go in and fix it right exactly where it is. We know what's in there.
So there's not a possibility of other utilities needing to go in and having to have that distance between water lines and other utilities? Is that?
Well, in this area, gas is located at the back
In
of
the
the
back,
property, so
yeah.
is sanitary sewer. So, I mean, unless new gas lines are to be run up front, which, I mean, obviously, I think at that point, I don't know why that would be done.
Well, and a portion of the question was, whenever they get ready to start this, putting in the new 8-inch water line, that they might run into issues that we would need the other right-of-way. Am I wrong? Did somebody help me here?
It is definitely a possibility, but I have
So
no idea.
that was
No.
my concern.
Sure.
So it's not necessarily the new one that I was worried about. It's when they're trying to put in the new one, what kind of issues you're going to get into. And, so I'm worried about the boogeyman out there, whenever I say that. I'm worrying about something that
It
may not happen.
It may be one of those things we have to address when we dig the hole and we find out what's
And
there.
like Steve said, I haven't put as much pipe in the ground as Mr. Showery, but I ran a shovel a lot in Bethany, and we don't know what's in the ground. Anytime you start any project, you never know what you're gonna hit.
So are we saying you may get to the point that if we approved no additional right-of-way tonight, that you might have to come back and request it later?
I would hope not.
I
would
know,
hope not.
but the boogeyman, yeah, that could be doable.
Is that even a possibility that we'd come back after the fact and add?
If that was the case, it'd open up a whole other line of issues, because it'd have to be right away from a lot of other property owners also.
Are you sure?
Well,
Why would there be right away
Because
requested
you're
from
running,
other
if you got
property?
an issue, if you can't run that water line straight down the street or down the side, if it has to be outside of the existing right of way, well, that means it's outside of the existing neighbor's right of ways also.
There'll be jogs
Well,
to
hey,
get it back.
Or jog it, yeah.
DEQ hasn't even approved this water line yet. I don't know why we're talking about it.
Are there any other questions of the applicant?
I just have a question maybe for the applicant and/or Steve. From a construction standpoint, is it possible to bore that pipe burst, whatever you want to call it, and we're going from the 43rd Street northeast corner to the north, is that right? And is it possible to do that without tearing up, because there's a lot of concrete in front of, on the west side of the Early Childhood Center. So from a construction standpoint, isn't it possible, or is it possible, I should ask, to do that project with very minimal
I'm going to be a smart aleck. You don't ever ask an engineer if it's possible, and he'll say, how much money do you have? And that's exactly right. It is quite possible, but their engineer has proposed an open cut, and 99 times out of 100, that's a more economical way to go, unless there's just some ridiculously expensive piece of something in the way. So I'm sure that Smith Roberts has already evaluated that and decided it's still easier and cheaper to tear up what's there and put it back than to try to bore. Bore is a risky proposition sometimes, especially when you're going longitudinally. If you're just crossing, if you hit something, it's just a small repair, but when you're trying to go longitudinally along parallel, you can really get yourself into trouble in a hurry. So I'm sure they've already taken that all into account when they proposed it.
I really am concerned that we not delay the project. And I think what we're all looking for is a way that we can get everything approved and help go forward with those items that were approved in the bond referendum. So it looks like we have everything in place, and it still needs review, but all the documents are here. So the only issues left are the dumpster pad and the additional right-of-way. Is that correct?
I believe that's my understanding.
Okay, that's how I'm reading it.
Well, and the way I look at it, planning and zoning approved those
Yes.
without those.
Right. So I would like to move that we accept the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is contingent upon whatever's left and the items that are up there, and with no requirement for a dumpster pad and no additional right-of-way required.
I'll second that.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll call one more time for anybody on the public hearing. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. We do have a motion and a second on the floor as approved by P and Z. Please post your votes. You got that, Susan? Okay. Item 5, also a public hearing item, consideration and possible approval of a site plan request by Bethany Public Schools for the main campus building modifications between North Asbury Avenue and North Mueller Avenue between 42nd Street and Northwest 46th Street. Steve.
Okay. As we talked about earlier, hopefully we now kind of see where this is going to go, and we'll get to moving. This also has fewer items that are still outstanding, so we hopefully can move on. Basically the same kind of issue. They've turned in a site plan application. This is actually 4 little tiny projects on the main campus. Again, the same requirements in the ordinance prohibit me from approving it because there are some potential deficiencies. We'll talk about those in a minute. The Planning and Zoning Commission has seen this. Basically, the aerial photo, you can kind of look up there. I've tried to show there's an auditorium on this end, an entry canopy here, a high school classroom here, and an elementary classroom here. So it's basically a combination of many separate projects. Zoning is EI, educational institutional, which that is an allowable use, or as public school is an allowable use in EI zoning. Comprehensive plan, again, hospitals, universities, schools, and churches on the strategic map, and on the targeted districts shown as public and institutional. The plat, again, state school land acreages, sufficient documentation exists to determine the land was legally subdivided. You can't see it very well there, but if you look really hard, you can see the existing right-of-way width on Mueller, 42nd, and Asbury is 40 feet. This is the water utilities. Since this is one big lot, there's an 8-inch line running along Mueller and an 8-inch line running from 42nd to 43rd on Asbury. That completes the ordinance requirement to have an adequate water line abutting the property. That's why there's no water line issue on this project. Same thing with the sewer. There's an 8-inch running along Mueller from here down to 42nd and along 42nd. So again, you have adequate sanitary sewer abutting the property, so the sanitary sewer is not an issue. This is the overall site plan. Again, here's the auditorium, here's the canopy area, here's the high school classroom, here's the elementary school classroom, the STEM facilities over here on the other side of Asbury. Again, the facade is all brick or EIFS. EI zoning does not require to comply with the facade requirement, but this would if it did. And the landscaping, existing landscaping, also complies with your new landscape ordinance. These are kind of little inset maps showing each individual project. We won't spend much time. This is the auditorium. It's basically approximately 3,200 square feet and 46 feet high, so it's a big, tall fella. Again, the facade is brick and EIFS. I'm going to go back because I want to show you a water line just to make sure it's in the record. This project does include rerouting this fire line out of the way. I want everybody to understand that is a private fire line. It does not belong to the city. We will not be involved in permitting, maintaining, installing, or anything else on that. The high school classroom inset, there's nothing there. It's about 1,500 square feet, 14 feet, 10 inches high. Again, brick and EIFS. Nothing. There's the elementary school, about 1,000 square feet, 18 feet, 10 inches high, brick and EIFS. The architect has gone out of his way to either make it matching or very complementary as far as height, exterior, etc. Site plan deficiencies, again, the same process went through. These two projects were turned in at the same time. There are a couple of deficiencies that still exist that prohibit me from approving the site plan. We'll go down those right now. The legal description is now resolved. That has been taken care of. The restrictive covenant binding all those lots into one has been resolved. That's been taken care of. Off-street parking has been resolved. The Planning and Zoning Commission, again, determined the parking load, and their existing parking is well within their guideline. The drainage, the engineer has determined, or has turned in a drainage report, which I have independently checked. He has done all the proper certifications, and I can positively endorse those certifications as with my agreement. Back to the same issue. Right-of-way width on Asbury, Mueller, and 42nd. Asbury we've talked about. It's a local street. Current regulations would require 50 foot of right-of-way, and there's only 40. Mueller and 42nd Street are shown on the comprehensive plan as collector streets, not local streets. So the current right-of-way requirement on a collector would be 60 feet. So these existing rights-of-way are 20 feet deficient and not just 10. Same thing. The applicant has expressed a desire to not give any more right-of-way, and the Planning and Zoning Commission did not make that part of their recommendation. And this is an interesting one. The paving width, because Mueller and 42nd are collectors, the existing 26-foot wide paving does not meet current standards for a collector street. The ordinance requires 32 feet of paving for a collector. So those two streets would be deficient under the current standards. The Planning and Zoning Commission, well, we'll talk about the same deficiencies we talked about before. We'll talk about that. Planning and Zoning did meet on the 16th. Recommended approval with contingencies. Basically, the existing parking is approved, no additional right-of-way, and they moved this to council without a recommendation on the paving width. There was no consensus on that, or at least the consensus was that it would be better dealt with by the council, and so that has gone before you without recommendation by Planning and Zoning. Basically, the same required actions. The only outstanding deficiencies at this point would be the right-of-way widths and the paving, and exactly the same options you had before. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide information if I can.
Steve, mine's a simple question, I believe, and I hope. What was the classification of Mueller Street before the comprehensive plan?
I do not know. That would go all the way back to 1972, and I don't have a copy of the plan that was in effect before that.
Okay, so the only deficiency is that it is not up to Collector Street standards.
Right, the right-of-way width and the paving.
But it does have curb and guttering,
Yes.
sidewalks.
That's correct.
Everything else that typically would
Well,
meet.
I mean, typically, the drainage would not be up to standard, but that's not specifically addressed in the ordinance, like paving widths and right-of-way widths.
Okay, so possibly, no, I'm not going to ask that. Never mind.
Right.
Okay.
If I recall from planning zoning, when you're referring to comp plan, that's actually like the 1970-something comp plan has it as Collector Street, right? Not our current one?
Well, that is still the current designation. It also lines up with the current designation that ACOG has for those streets as well. The Association of Central Oklahoma Governments maintains an inventory of streets in the metro area, and those are also consistent with their designations as well. But until the new ordinances or whatever are implemented, then because there are so many references to those local streets versus collectors versus major thoroughfares, that's what we have to go by.
Can you give us some definitions of what collector streets are?
Collector Street is traditionally where, think of a new subdivision where there are a lot of houses and you have local streets that feed to bigger street that traditionally is wider, has a higher speed limit, more traffic because it's a collector street. It collects the local streets so that you can exit out onto a major thoroughfare. That's usually the hierarchy, goes from local to collector to major thoroughfare. And so Mueller has been designated as a collector street, not just in this area, but all up and down its length, all the way down to 23rd.
However, there's nothing about Mueller that makes it look any different from a neighborhood street in reality.
Correct. Well, yeah, that's the problem. It's deficient.
Right, not now.
And the issue is it's deficient all around the school. So to make it proper at the school still does nothing for traffic or anything else because you still have the bottleneck of going down a deficient street to get to the one that's not.
Yeah, the only.
I mean, it's like
yeah.
we've talked about in drainage, to replace a big drain pipe in the middle of a drainage issue does nothing if it's a little straw out here on the end. So, I mean, you've still got the bottleneck of
Yeah,
the straw.
the only advantage would be it is 6 feet wider, and you might be able to get by the parked cars a little easier, but you're right. If you've got a wide street here and then it necks down on either end.
You still have the traffic jam.
It's not an optimum situation.
And again, unless the city's going to widen it all the way through from, 39th to 50th or and same on the numbered street there at, what was it, 44th?
42nd.
42nd. I mean, it just doesn't make much sense unless we're going to take it out to Rockwell. And again, then we're going to be buying right-of-way from residences. We're probably going to be up at somebody's front door.
Going north on Mueller, north of 46th Street, it would be near impossible to go 42-foot wide because the homes are so close to the road.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're going to be you're going to be buying up actual homes, and losing the head counts up there versus. And I'm not saying that that's the thing is, that it probably all should have been built proper to begin with. I mean, that's the problem. We're paying the price for issues that are many, many decades old.
That's correct, and this is kind of maybe help people understand too why Bethany didn't widen 50th. And whenever you come into Bethany, is because of the right-of-ways, and it'd be
You're
in
in somebody's
people's front doors. So this is the same thing. So if people have questions on that, this is what's been going on for years and years.
And Steve, isn't the intent of going to a wider street if you're, like you said, putting a subdivision in, you're gonna have more traffic?
That's correct.
And in this case, with this project, they're not adding any capacity, as far as for adding traffic on the street. Or are they?
They are saying they're not going to add students, teachers, staff, or anything else as a result of these projects. That is the statement of the applicant, yes.
This is a public hearing item. I'll open the floor for comments from the public or the applicant.
I'd like to move that we accept the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding the parking and the 40-foot right-of-way, and that we not require additional paving for the widening of the streets.
Okay, we have a motion for approval as P and Z stated. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further questions or comments?
I would just like to make a statement that I did ask the attorney if there was a conflict. I'm on the Bethany Public School Foundation. The city attorney said there's really not, that does not pose a conflict, but just for purposes of looking as an impropriety, that's why I'm abstaining in my voting.
Okay, please post your vote.
Could somebody, would you restate your motion, please?
Yes. I move that we approve the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which they approved the parking as it was presented. They approved the 40-foot right-of-way, which would mean no additional right-of-way. And they passed the paving on to the city council. So I'm recommending that we not require additional paving for the streets, and then that the site plan is approved. And I think at this point there are no additional contingencies.
Please post your votes. Item 6, consideration and possible action to approve the FY 2017 jail services agreement with Oklahoma County and authorize the mayor to sign the document on behalf of the city of Bethany. Steve?
This is our annual jail services agreement with Oklahoma County. The difference is, and I would like to correct something that was in the original statement that you got from me. UConn no longer provides jail services. They are out of the business until further notice. So our sole source to take someone to jail for longer than a 10-day lockup is now Oklahoma County. The price has gone down. So it's gone down from $47.29 to $42, which is a good thing for us. I would certainly recommend that we pass this as it is our only alternative.
Do we have such a motion?
I'd make a motion that we approve.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Please post your votes. Thank you. Item 7, consideration and possible approval of ordinance number 1916, amending Title 5, Chapter 50 and 52 of the Bethany Code of Ordinances pertaining to water rate surcharge for customers exceeding water usage of 20,000 gallons per month under stated circumstances, providing for legislative findings, provided for security deposits for utilities, providing for meter exchanges fees, and providing for repealer and severability and declaring an emergency. Steve?
This is what we have discussed this for a couple of months now, actually. This is to eliminate the change that was made in the rates a year ago that was actually deficient to pay for Oklahoma City water. This actually allows us to charge a surcharge for those individuals, businesses, and institutions that use over 20,000 gallons of water in a month after we have been forced to open the valve with Oklahoma City. In a perfect world, we would not ever have to open that valve, and we'd never have to charge the surcharge, but unfortunately, that is not the situation we find ourselves in right now. This ordinance also is increasing well, not necessarily increasing the deposit, it is changing the deposit. It's actually 2 times the average total monthly bill for the past 2 years, which also includes winter months when that bill will go down. So theoretically, if they conserve water in the summertime, have a low bill in the wintertime, the deposit, well, truthfully, it won't go down because the deposit right now is $40, and that's ridiculous. But it will be a more reasonable deposit for the city. And it also allows us to have a charge for changing a meter when someone is not, when someone believes there's a problem with their meter, we will change the meter, we will have the meter tested, and if it's found that the meter is okay, then they will be charged a fee for that process.
All right, item 7A is consideration and possible approval of ordinance number 1916 on reading by title only. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? I guess there was 2 motions there. Please post your votes.
You know, I'll be glad to read this again, except when the mayor read the agenda item, he read the title, which is what I would do again, but I think that's sufficient unless you want me to read it again.
I think we're good. 7B is consideration and possible approval of sections 1 through 6 of ordinance number 1916. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Go ahead, David.
I might point out that our Eagle Eye council member Harris detected a typographical error on page 3, and what it was, your existing ordinance was deficient in that it only talked about a water deposit. So I've repealed that section and changed water deposit to utility deposit. And there was one place where I missed, it's actually under B on page 3, toward the top of the page. It says water service deposit, it should say utility service deposit. And I've corrected that and have a revised version here. But other than that, I think Steve summarized it appropriately. It has 6 enacting sections and a separate section 7, which is the emergency clause.
All right. Yeah. All right. Is there any questions or discussion?
Steve, thank you for working on this. I think this was much needed to be addressed, and I think this is a very fair way to where we are getting what we need as a city to operate the water department, but yet it's fair to the customers, to the end users. I think this was the right thing to do.
All right, please post your votes. Thank you. Item 7C, consideration and possible approval of section 7 of ordinance number 1916, the emergency section. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion for approval of the emergency section. Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there a question or discussion? Please post your votes. Thank you. Mr. Shirey? Item 8, consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 1416, establishing monthly rates and for fees of water and sewer utilities, providing for imposition of a surcharge for usage in excess of 20,000 gallons per month for water and providing an effective date for those fees as of August 1st, 2016. Steve?
This item explains the increase in the water and sewer rates. It's been a long time since Bethany had any increase in water or sewer. The way this is set up is for the less water you use, the less bill you pay, obviously. And just as you incrementally step up, then the more you will pay and the higher rate you will pay. I think it's important for people to understand that the surcharge is not charged until we actually have to open the valve with Oklahoma City. We won't charge that until we truthfully, clearly have to open that valve. The reason that valve is opened is because we have to protect our ability to fight fires. And we have already actually opened that valve a couple of times this summer, but it's only been just to top off the tanks, and that would not be the time that we would charge the surcharge. But I'm afraid from the weather report I saw this morning, we are reaching that point to where they're talking about a heat dome that's going to be 3 weeks of no rain, and so we're getting very close to that time right now where we actually have to open the tap, and that's when we actually do million-gallon draws, and that is when that surcharge will kick in. So again, this is the time when we need to start talking about, for the big users, might want to start conserving water. So.
And hopefully this, as we discussed in our previous meeting, will help encourage some of those specific apartment complex to fix some deficiencies they have, because no doubt due to their size and the amount of water they're using, there has to be leaks or valves just being left open. There's no possible way they're using, a small apartment complex is using over double, I believe, in 1 month back last year, what its nearest apartment complex used, and it's probably a third of the size of those other complexes. So there's just no possible way they're consuming that much water. It has to be from leakage and other things, and this should help encourage them to get those problems fixed.
It's incredible how much water a flapper valve in a toilet will waste. And if you have 30 of those flapper valves, you're wasting huge amounts of water, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. So this is going to force the correction of that problem.
Yeah, and that particular one doesn't even have any green space. They may have some brown space, but they're not watering anything exterior. It's all just going literally up to the water treatment or the sewer treatment plant.
Correct.
I have a question. Is the fee going to be increased only when they hit the 20,000, or is it from first gallon forward? The increase?
It says it's over 20,000, so it's every 1,000 above that.
The surcharge?
Yeah.
Yeah, the surcharge is from 20,000 and above.
Okay, so 20,001 it starts.
Right.
So if you're over 20,000 gallons, there are really 3 calculations on your bill. The minimum, the next, which goes to 20,000, and then above 20,000.
And our software programs are going to support the calculation.
This,
I'm
sorry,
Go ahead, Don.
I was just gonna say, this might be one of the best things to get rid of slumlords that Bethany has ever done. And JR is gonna have a blast with it, getting all those phone calls, I can assure you. That's all I got.
Actually, I think there are 4 levels because there's the base. So the base includes 1,000.
Right,
And then the next is like
that's the base
1,001.
charge that
Yeah.
everybody pays, yeah. And that includes 1,000 gallons of water.
All right, do we have a motion on item 8?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Please post your votes. All right. Item 9, consideration and possible action concerning the hiring/appointment of J.D. Cox as the new city manager and approval of an employment agreement with terms of employment We do have a executive session listed on the agenda here, council members, but you should have all received what David negotiated. So unless there's just any specific questions or discussion that you want, we don't necessarily have to go into executive session, but if somebody does want to, we are able to do that. So
Are you referring to the email that he sent to us?
correct, of the
Okay.
contract.
Sure.
When was the email sent?
I believe last Thursday or Friday. I think it was Thursday. And there should, I don't know if there was
It
a,
should have been an email with the contract attached to it.
but I believe it was sent Thursday. I think
Thursday, I
Thursday
believe
was
that's
when,
correct.
when we wrapped up our
I believe
negotiations
that's
with
correct.
it.
Late Thursday evening, I believe. Close to 5 o'clock, I think.
So I'd entertain either a motion to approve the contract or one to enter into executive session, whatever you choose.
I would like to go into executive session.
Okay.
Just to review.
All right, so we have a motion for executive session. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Please post your votes.
That was Thursday.
Thank you. We'll be as brief as possible in executive session.
Is that your car?
All right, I'll call us.
It's their car.
I'll call us back to order here in regular session. We discussed the contract terms in executive session, but no votes were taken. I'll entertain a motion now for approval of the contract.
I so moved, we accept the recommendation
Second.
of the committee.
All right. We have a approval and a second for the new manager's contract. Please post your votes. Thank you. All right, item 10 is the city attorney's report, David.
I believe all my items were on the agenda.
All right.
Oh, I did send you a little memo today on some new laws that, probably the most significant one is the one that takes the driving while under the influence out of our court, and that's going to have some effect on your budget. John's put some numbers together, and it looks pretty significant, so we'll see how that pans out.
Thank you. Item 11 is the city attorney's report. Steve? I'm sorry, city manager's report.
Very quickly,
You just got
all I
everything.
have is a thanks to everyone from the city to put on the 4th of July. Linda, for all of the work that she did. She starts that about January, and just as the year progresses, it gets more intense. To all the public works guys for all the work they put in to get it ready, and to all the work that the police officers do for all the security throughout the day, and just thank you to them. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Item 13 is council members' announcements, comments, and proposals. Councilmember Harris, start with you tonight.
Thank you. I too want to thank everyone for their work on the 4th of July festivities, and especially Marla and Linda. It just seems like they do so much, and really appreciate that. In announcing new restaurants, I noticed that Asian Fusion is supposed to open on July 22nd, and that's the restaurant that we've all been waiting for up on 39th Street, the other tax-paying corridor, so we're looking forward to that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Holloway?
I'd just like to say thank you to Hazel, to Chief Hunter, to Mr. Diaz, Mr. Lopez, Marla Nix, David Buchanan, and I believe it was Mr. Court, the one that we had the issue with the last name. But I thank them all for their years of service, and appreciate all of their time and effort that they put in to this great city, and that's a portion of why it makes it such a great city. I'm also very excited about the new city manager, Mr. J.D. Cox. I'm looking forward to this, and I think the city's in great things are happening, and I'm very excited.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you. I just want to thank Steve or whoever else did all the calculations on the water. I don't think the impact, you realize the impact it's gonna have on the city. JR is fixing to find out, if he makes it. There are people literally financing their business through us. I mean, it sounds absurd, but you take 50 units, 40 units, 100 units, and do the math on it. It's $100,000 times $2 a gallon. That'll get, when you start getting the 6-figure phone calls, it's gonna get their attention. But I think that'll do a whole lot to help clean up our city. And we're gonna hear a lot about it, I promise you. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Councilmember Lundster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seems like every year we think about the celebration of America's freedom and what we do in our town to provide thousands of people. I don't know how to count that many people, but we provide this a public service to allow them to come into our town and enjoy celebrations. And every year I think, how is it that we can provide another festival free of issues? We had very, very tiny issues this year, just tiny ones that are easy piece of cakes, to solve. And with that many thousands of people that come in, and I'm just thankful that again this year we were able to do that with our amazing city employees, Steve. You can't run through the list and well enough, and you just started, like she said, Marla and Linda, and of course Danielle was out there many, many hours too. But the public works guys, just troopers, absolute troopers. And not only were they hard workers, but they're a blast to be around. The only gripe that I had this year was Tarcisio had cataract surgery and wasn't out there for me to chase around and have a good time with. But I did get to see him today as we were cleaning up and finishing up. But my goodness, what a time, what an opportunity to be with your family and celebrate. And David, I guess congratulations are in order for the mayor's trophy. And I'd like to be able to at least have it up here on the horseshoe for one time.
I suggested, Randy, maybe we glue it to the podium.
It's a fine trophy, just sits up there and hide, maybe
That
hide
picture
his.
of that girl that was in the car needs to go with that trophy.
Right, right. Just kind of hide the water pitcher or something, but what a fantastic event, and I just appreciate staff so much for all that they do for this event. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I've got one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just in defense, and a note out to Richard, I forgot it, I didn't get his last name, I believe, lived at 25th and Glade. I don't think he really understood our process, that we just could not address him. Richard Day, and it was not because we were unsympathetic or uncaring or just absolutely nothing we can do. I think I've been in this city as long as anybody except for maybe Mr. Shirey. But when I was younger, the police chief will call you back, even if you don't want him to when you're young. But even as an adult, the police chief has yet to never call me back. And there's no way that if Phil Cole is asked, that he will not call you back. So I'm defending Mr. Cole a little bit too, Chief Cole. I have every assurance that Phil Cole will call him back.
I must add something to that. The police chief would call your parents also. You realize that. I mean, why didn't you say that? And it wouldn't, I wouldn't be getting laughed at up here. Why didn't you?
Councilmember Larson, go ahead.
I can't express any more hardly than's already been said about the staff, but I think every year that I've had the privilege of working in the tent, I am amazed at the dedication of the people that are working and volunteering their time and sacrificing their time with their families, not for a day or two, but in some cases as much as 2 weeks or more. And I work directly with some of the public works people at the tent, and they tell me how, their family's going to come out on the 4th of July, and they've shared with me how long they've been away. And I don't think we as a council, I know I don't, understand individually for each of these employees the sacrifices they make for this city. And saying I appreciate it just isn't enough. But I do say thank you. We had many volunteers, and I want to thank them also. And we had fun in the tent. And I hope everybody got cool and got a little soft drink or water and some snacks that were provided. And I too, Mr. Curtis, I hope that Mr. Day can be addressed quickly, and that maybe somebody can contact him tomorrow. Would be great. I also would like to ask, in light that we are back down to 2 in our code enforcement and inspections, are we actively seeking to replace that position that we lost recently? Are we going to put a 3rd one back on?
I plan on putting a 3rd one back on, but I would kind of like to have some input from the new city manager.
Yeah, I think the purpose was to wait and let the new city manager make some of those decisions.
Okay, that makes sense.
Rather than hiring somebody and then them saying, well, that's not who I would have put in that position.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I appreciate that. I too am very excited about Mr. Cox coming, and I think that I think he's going to be a good B12 shot for the city of Bethany. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Herron.
Thank you, Mayor. Just would like to also thank all the staff and the many, many volunteers for everything we put on yesterday. Great time. Our family had a great time. And my son had a blast helping Randy all day Friday, dragging porta potties around. So that was a good time for him. And then as regards to Richard Day coming in, I would kind of like to see if crime reports are available for like the past several years, to see are the trends increasing, decreasing, staying the same for certain areas. I don't know if that's something we could put together and look at so we can have some hard facts on that.
I can tell you the police department does keep those kind of statistics, and they can furnish those to you by area and by types of crimes too. And I can tell you violent crimes like murders and things, those are really low in Bethany, and there's funds available for those kinds of areas, and we really don't qualify for any of the funds that are available in high violent crime areas.
And that's good.
Yeah, it's good.
But the police department can run that report pretty quick and easy, and we can have that probably at the next meeting for everybody.
Yeah. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Shirey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Day approached me about, I guess it was 2 meetings ago, he approached us, and I followed up on his complaint at that time, and he said that he had some difficulty with the dispatcher, and the assistant chief said it was a new dispatcher that they're training several dispatchers over there, and people don't realize that's a fairly important job that requires a lot of expertise. And he said it was that he would look into it, and he did. And I couldn't get back. I couldn't find Mr. Day. I don't think I got his telephone number, but I couldn't find his telephone number in the book. And he'd only been here for a short amount of time. But I did check into that, and it was a guy just walking down the street. Our police officer was there probably within 5 minutes and stopped the fellow, but he couldn't, we have certain rights, or people think they have certain rights that they can walk up and down streets and knock on doors. And I don't think that you can necessarily stop these type of things unless you see them break into a car. And that's, walking up and knocking on somebody's door. We know that has that's the way that a lot of crimes are committed, or started. And the area down in that he is living in is the area that I live in, and we're having a lot of pressure from south of us, and it's very difficult. I see a lot of people walking in the streets that I can't recognize. But if you call the police out, I mean, the officer can come up and say, well, I've had a call with somebody down here, and that's about all he can say. And that's what I would go back to Mr. Day and reiterate these things to him. Well, I also want to thank the city employees for their absolute great job that they did on this Family Fun Fest. And also the outside volunteers that do not receive any remunerations whatsoever that work to put this on. There are several people that work on this particular program that we have, and we couldn't probably do it without. And I don't know how many people were there, but it was probably the most people that I have ever seen at a Bethany parade. It was overwhelming. I know I pitched out over 3,000 pieces of candy, and one little kid come up to me and says, well, I'm very happy that we can have Halloween twice a year because we get all of this candy, you know, and we don't even have to get dressed up or go out in the dark.
That's cute.
But it was a very, very good crowd that we had, and I think the people that were there enjoyed it very much. I know I enjoyed it very much. And that's about all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Councilmember.
I wish I could say more, but I just can't. But I know there is one thing. I think that Councilmember Holloway is absolutely right. We do not have enough time to look at all of the different things that need to be looked at on some of these things that come before us. I think we need more time. And as was brought out, you know, if you don't have everything there, you should roll it up and give it back to them and say, go out and finish this checklist and then bring it back to us so we can start to work. And that is what kills their time of getting a job done or getting started on a job. They knew, the school knew in April or before, they knew before that they were going to have to address all of these particular situations. Their architect should have known that. But yet they bring it up here and put the onus on us to approve something that we have to have. And I thank you very much, Councilmember Holloway, for bringing that up. That's all I really have to say.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Knapp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The thing that really stood out to me yesterday were the smiles. The little kids, the families that were out there, the employees, all of the public works and just everybody, city employees, saw so many smiles. It was really a great thing. Really made a difference to my day. And the employees were just on the spot. Anything that needed to be done, they were getting it done. It was really a great thing. And it's every year, but just yesterday really made a difference in my day. I'd like to welcome Mr. Cox as our new city manager. I look forward to having him here so I can welcome him in person, but ready to move forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, of course, I too want to thank staff for all their incredibly hard work on putting together another incredibly successful Freedom Fest. It's always a fun time. I know it's not necessarily fun for those in public safety or in public works that are out there from dusk to dawn, and Public Works especially leading up the weeks before, and quite a bit of time after the cleanup and tear down. But it is a lot of fun, the festivities we have, and as Randy said, went off basically without a hitch this year, other than just the few minor things that you're always going to have little issues here and there. But it was a fun event, and as Mr. Shirey mentioned, I think the parade was is every bit as large as it's ever been, if not larger. Oftentimes there's big gaps as you come off of Rockwell onto 36th Street, and it was just solid from start to finish on the parade route this year, with people lining the streets, and a lot of smiling faces out there. It's always a fun event, and thanks again to staff for all their incredibly hard work on that, and Public Works especially for making that park look so fantastic, especially since just a few short months ago it was piled high with brush, but all gone, and we were able to park cars. So, and I want to congratulate and welcome J.D. Cox as our new city manager. I think it'll be a great thing having him on board. I think he's going to have some great ideas, and hopefully help move us forward. We're in an exciting time of growth, and I think he'll be a good, energetic person to be in the middle of that growth. So look forward to getting him caught up to speed, and him starting in September right after Labor Day. So that's 60 days. That's contractually what he had to give to his current employer. So that's when he should be here. He will, however, he has expressed desire to be plugged in and know what's going on from this point forward. So I think we'll be including him on any email communication and other information that goes out, so he can hopefully get caught up to speed as quick as possible, and have to spend less time doing that when he actually gets here and gets boots on the ground. So want to congratulate him and his family, and look forward to having him here. Is there any new business to come before the Bethany City Council?
I wanted to mention one thing. I think we all probably got the same, I think it was an email. I believe the name was Mr. Doc, perhaps, and it had to do with code enforcement and how code enforcement should be done and what the fire department should do and police department. But, you know, he obviously had thought it through. And I just responded and thanked him for it, but I don't know, should that go on to the new city manager? Is that something you're looking at? It was, you know, he had thought it out, that's all I'm saying.
Well, we can
I know the email that you're talking about, and truthfully, I've been a little bit busy lately, and I hadn't finished reading the email, and I have forwarded many things to JD, and if I think, yeah, I'll forward it to him. I mean, we all have ideas about what would make things better, and so.
All right, is there any new business? Hearing none, if there's no objection, I'll declare us adjourned until July 17th, 2016. And without objection, I'll declare us adjourned. We'll now open the Bethany Public Works Authority. We have the consent docket items 1A and B. Do we have a motion for approval on those items?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Please post your votes. Thank you. Is there any new business to come before the Bethany Public Works Authority? Hearing none, if there's no objection, we will adjourn until July 19th, 2016. And without objection, I'll declare us adjourned. Now open the Bethany Hospital Trust. We have the consent docket items 1A and B. Do we have a motion for approval on those items?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Please post your votes. Thank you. Is there any new business to come before the Bethany Hospital Trust? Hearing none, if there's no objection, we will adjourn until July 19th, 2016. Without objection, I'll declare us adjourned. I'll now open the Bethany Development Authority. We have the consent docket items 1A and B. Do we have a motion for approval on those items?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Please post your votes. Thank you. Is there any new business to come before the Bethany Development Authority? Hearing none, if there's no objection, we will adjourn until July 19th, 2016. Without objection, I'll declare us adjourned, and that concludes tonight's business. Thank you.